Hi there, my name is Pete. I just got lucky. I suddenly got rich. It happened right at the airport. How? I'll tell you in detail. But first, answer this question. What would you do if you accidentally took someone else's luggage with the money? Write your answer choices in the comments below the video. And maybe some of you have had a similar story. Can't wait to read it. I look forward to likes and subscriptions. As you may have realised, I found luggage with money in it. It was unexpected. The thing is, I was supposed to fly to visit my aunt in Chicago that day. My parents had asked her to put me up for the summer because the house was being renovated. So, to keep me out of the way, they sent me to visit. I packed up abruptly because I loved being there because of my cousin Jack. Of course, it wasn't me, if anything would go smoothly. I overslept, fell down the stairs at the house. My suitcase fell open as I dragged it in a hurry to my dad's car. On the way, the yellow ribbon my mum had taped to the handle of my suitcase so I wouldn't mix it up fell off. As soon as I arrived at the airport, I didn't even say goodbye to my parents. Checked in and got on the plane last. People in the cabin were throwing jokes like, haha, that's who the flight was delayed for. I flew for a couple of hours, and when we went to get our luggage, it turned out that some things got lost. And I was among those lucky people. Where's my luggage? I yelled, demanding an explanation from the administration. They were already waiting for me in the waiting room. Where was it? Sorry about that. We're doing our best to find it. Do you remember your suitcase? Of course I do. It's black. It's small. Just a couple of minutes, please. I was so nervous, I was ready to write a complaint. But then they found 4 suitcases. 2 of them were the same. The 2 quickly unpacked theirs, and I also grabbed mine and went. Behind me, a serious-looking man took the last one and walked slowly towards the exit. You're very scandalous for your age. And you're very talkative for your age. I didn't mean to offend you, I'm sorry. I turned away and ran to Jack, who was standing there looking at me expectantly. We came home happy, ate a lot, chatted, and then I decided to run to my room to get out presents for my aunt and brother. But when I opened it, I just freaked out. Instead of stuff, there was money. Jack walked abruptly into the room and saw a fortune. I don't know what you're up to, but I'll take it as a present. Shit, I took someone else's luggage. What? Are you serious? How did they let that much money into the luggage in the first place? I have no idea, but I think I know who it belongs to. And that guy looked pretty terminatory. What's a Terminator? Forget it, but it's not good. What if he can't find you? You were at the airport. There's no way he's gonna find you. He saw who lost the luggage and he even talked to me. What if he's senile or he lost his in a cab? You don't know that for sure. So what do you suggest? Wait a couple of days, and if no one calls, which I'm sure they will, you can spend it on yourself and me too. And if they do, you'll give it to me, that's all. We locked ourselves in a room and counted the amount. There was exactly $1 million. I'd only ever seen it in the movies. We hid the suitcase under the bed and waited. The days dragged on endlessly, but on the 3rd day of our stay, no one called. 2 Petes were fighting in me, one listening to Jack, the other to my conscience. Every time we talked about where we would spend the money, a whole lot of madness came out. Besides new devices, a bunch of paid app subscriptions, bikes and skateboards, Jack said he would take the girl of his dreams to the most expensive restaurant in Chicago. He was sure he would win her over. And I dreamed of buying myself a trailer to live in and have it on the road. Like, it's cool to be free and travel, and a trailer is brutal. On the 3rd day, we went into withdrawal. Jack kept hitting at the old broken phone, and I was already busy looking online for trailers and a place to park it so my folks wouldn't notice. We took a small amount of money, determined to spend it. Then the phone rang abruptly, and Jack and I looked at each other. His mum picked up the phone. Hello, yes, that's right. Our address? Are you coming over now? My son? At home? Yes. Who are you? I didn't hear you. Okay, we're waiting. We ran back and put the money down. Then my aunt came in and said that Mrs. Gloria was coming from the hospital to renew Jack's card. Phew, that's a miss. Let's do it afterwards then. Okay. The whole procedure with the nurse dragged on. While Jack was free, our hardware store closed, and we decided to reschedule for the next day. Barely waiting until morning, we got on the bus and drove straight to the store. But the driver suddenly got sick. We had to make a forced stop. It was a long walk, and you would not believe it, but there was not a single cab. Then my mother called me and asked me to put my aunt on the phone right away because she wasn't answering from hers. I explained that we weren't home, but my mum didn't care. She needed some important documents for the house that Auntie kept. We had to go back. That took time too. Anyway, the second attempt to spend the free money failed as well. Already angry, we took the whole suitcase the next day, immediately ordered a cab and drove to the mall. Since no one called today, it's okay. Who lost it, lost it. So be it. I give you my stuff in exchange for $1 million. Now that's something I like. Let's go to the most expensive boutique in the world. On the way, we accidentally lost the handle of our suitcase and it fell open. Okay, nobody noticed except for a couple of guys behind us. We quickly collected the money and moved on, but noticed we were being followed. I whispered to my brother and he got nervous and pointed to the fire exit with his eyes. I nodded my head and we ran. Those guys ran after us. It was a real race. "Hold it right there," they yelled, "or it's gonna get worse." They managed to catch us right in the stairwell. They looked older and immediately pinned us against the wall and asked where two teenagers got such a huge amount of money from. "It's not ours." "Of course it's not yours. Where did you get that much? Should I call the police?" "Don't call the police. Mum would kill me if she found out." "We can do something else. You give us the case and we'll take it from there. What you have done, nobody will find out." "We agree." "Give us half of it at least. It's not fair. I found them." "How about a punch in the face?" "Ah, take the damn money." Those two let go of us and ran off with the suitcase. We got really upset and pissed off. I yelled at my brother that he was too quick to give up, that we could have bargained. But Jack yelled that I didn't know the local guys, that they'd cut me down without blinking an eye. It's free money anyway. I'd rather give someone else $1 million than get killed in a mall stairwell. Yeah, you're right. Goodbye, my trailer. Goodbye to my new smartphone. We walked out of the mall and wandered sluggishly home. We barely spoke at dinner. Well, my aunt wasn't paying attention. She was sitting watching the news. Out of the corner of our ears, we heard a clip from TV. Two guys were apprehended this afternoon while trying to buy an expensive 3-car lot at a company car dealership. According to the seller, the dubious individuals approached, looked at the new cars, and immediately wanted to execute a sales transaction. I didn't believe it was their money right away, so I called the police with a button and walked up to them myself and slowly processed the forms. When it was my turn to pay, they pulled out a suitcase of money and said, "There's $1 million here, keep it for your tip." We counted the money and the amount was correct, but if it wasn't for one but, the bills were counterfeit, all up to $1, the salesman said in an interview. Jack and I looked at each other sharply, looking at each other, wanting to laugh wildly, but we couldn't help ourselves. Quickly going up to the room, we locked ourselves in and yelled stupidly with laughter. You know, right? That's why they didn't catch that guy at the airport and let him carry the money in the suitcase. Yeah, and that's why he didn't find me. Yeah, if I had $1 million, I'd do anything to get it back. I'd even commit a crime. Think those bad guys saved us from a crime. Can you imagine their faces when they found out it was fake? We sighed with relief and sat down to watch TV before going to bed. Suddenly, there was a commercial about casting teenage kids in a movie. And do you know who was talking? The same guy whose luggage I picked up. Oh, that's it. So he's a producer. Yeah, I guess so. We were lucky to get away with it after all. Yeah, I'm glad too. I wish they'd beat us up or something. Wait a minute. My stuff. So I lost it. Mum's gonna kill me.
Hi, my name is Phil, and I am a millionaire at 18 years old. You will be surprised and think that the money was probably earned not by me but by my rich parents. But this is not true. I am ready to share my story with you right now. I was born in an ordinary family. I have no brothers or sisters. My parents worked as doctors and almost always disappeared from work. For as long as I can remember, I also wanted to follow in their steps, but my father said that if I want to become a doctor, I must be 100% ready for it, because the work takes all the time, and as a return, a saved human life, but it is not always a good income. That's probably why they got married, because they understood each other. Others would simply not understand this kind of work. I can't say that our family lived comfortably. We were not poor, but we did not live on a free hand. Doctors don't always make a lot of money, as Dad pointed out. I promised my parents that one day I would get rich and they wouldn't have to work so hard anymore. They will be able to take a well deserved rest the day before and stop worrying about other people's lives and finally take care of their own. Once in the middle of the night, the phone rang at home. An urgent call came from the hospital. It turned out that a whole family was poisoned by carbon monoxide. Their children were there. My parents rushed to the hospital without a word. My mother gave me one last kiss and told me they would be back soon. It took them a long time to get to work, and they weren't driving their own car anymore. They were in a car accident, and Dad didn't survive. Some ass cut in front of my father, and he lost control. In general, I have only my mother left. We began to live worse than we did, so I decided to find a job. It wasn't easy because I was a teenager, and I needed a flexible schedule because of my studies. My classmate Jim helped me. He heard that a neighbor of his grandmother's needed someone to take care of the garden, walk the dogs, and clean the pool. All this for a good price. Of course, I immediately agreed. So after school, I could go there without interfering with my studies. Grandma Grace was a very nice and polite old lady. She immediately explained what to do. She had a swanky mansion with a huge garden, a swimming pool, and a smooth lawn. I've only seen it in movies before. She looked like a magazine cover, too. Grandmother was old, but it was obvious that she was taking good care of herself. As a child, I dreamed of living in a house like this, having purebred dogs, drinking lemonade in my garden, and playing with the most expensive toys. Mrs. Grace praised me. I did well, and it wasn't the first time I had to do dirty work, since my parents were often away from home. I got the job done in just a few hours, and Grandma Grace offered to have a lemonade with her in the garden. I agreed. She asked about family, parents. I didn't try to hide anything, and I told them everything as it was. She took pity on me and apologized. At this moment, we were approached by a boy. He was so rude to her. I think he demanded money. The hostess smiled, gave him her card, and he left without even looking at me. This is my grandson since his parents died. I've been looking after him. Never mind, he's a well-behaved boy, but he often forgets his manners. You see, after the death of his parents, he became very vulnerable, Grace said. For some reason, she tried to justify it to me. I just said something about losing my father, but that doesn't give me a reason to treat my mother as if it's all her fault. You're a good boy, said Mrs. Grace, with a little note of envy in her voice. And so it went on. Gradually, drinking lemonade after work became our little tradition. We found more and more common topics to talk about. One day, she asked me what my dream was. I told her that I had promised my father that I would get rich so that he and my mother would no longer work. Mrs. Grace smiled. Over time, we were able to communicate with her grandson Peter. It turns out that we have a lot in common. He's not a bad guy, just a little withdrawn after the incident with his parents. I understood him very well. Then we became friends. Mrs. Grace noticed this, but asked no questions. I liked that she could respect other people's boundaries. A couple of months later, I had a birthday, and my mother insisted that we celebrate it at home, promised to cook some goodies, and skip the late shift at work. I invited Peter and his grandmother and introduced them to my mother. The evening was quite nice and interesting. We laughed and joked a lot. I haven't seen my mom this happy in a long time. Grandma praised me all through dinner and made my mother blush. At the end of the evening, Mrs. Grace took out an envelope and said that it was a gift from her and Peter, and asked us to open it after they left. That's nice of you, my mother said. We said a warm goodbye, and my mother wrapped them up with her own made apple pie, and they went home. So we went back to the living room, and I opened the envelope, and a letter fell out. I have lived for many years, but only at the end of my life I realized that a person remains a person from their own choice, and not from circumstances. You and Peter have similar tragedies, which I bitterly regret. These terrible situations with the death of loved ones did not break your upbringing and attitude to others. Your mother is lucky to have such a son. This gift to you from me so that you finally fulfilled your dream, got rich, and your mother went on a well-deserved vacation, the letter said. The envelope itself contained a check for $1 million. For another 5 minutes, there was a silence in our room. Then my mother fainted. I sat and stared at the receipt, my eyes bulging with surprise, my palms sweating, my cheeks flushed with hot breath. $1 million? 1 million? Mom, we are millionaires, I shouted at last. Mom opened her eyes at that moment, got up from the floor, and snatched the check out of my hands. We couldn't believe it. I immediately remembered my dad. I wish he was with us at this moment. Mom immediately sat down at the computer and chose the next flight to another country on vacation. We'll go on vacation, and you go to Mrs. Grace tomorrow, she said firmly. I went to my grandmother's house and she asked me, laughing, if I would continue to cut the bushes in her garden as a millionaire, and I replied that my work had long since developed into a pleasant way of life, so I would still be a gardener. It took me a long time to find the right words to express my gratitude for such a generous gift, but I think she understood me without words. I hugged her and told her that I would visit her again very soon, and she whispered something in my ear. Then my mother and I first bought tickets to another country to travel. It was the first time I'd seen my mother so relaxed. For the first time, she didn't rush anywhere, didn't run down the hall with a gurney, didn't break the news to relatives of patients, didn't worry about bills, and didn't cry. She was just resting, just like I wanted her to. After a while, my mother and I came up with and opened a small business, which I successfully run together with Peter, my already best friend. You gave me so much more, hope for good, my grandmother had whispered. So we gave it to each other.